My name is Elias Thorne. At 30, I'm a freelance photographer renting an attic studio in Brooklyn. My lens is drawn to the light and shadow on the city's edges, subway tunnels at 4 a.m., graffiti on abandoned factory walls, blurred silhouettes of pedestrians in the rain. These lonely images defined my entire life, until Lila Ventura burst into my darkroom, wearing the scent of a Manhattan gallery and bearing an absurd proposal. It was a Wednesday in March. I was lifting a freshly developed photo with tweezers, the darkroom's red light bathing everything in an ambiguous orange glow. The lock clicked suddenly, and Lila rushed in, raindrops still clinging to the hem of her trench coat. She'd been a fellow student in college, an art history prodigy, now a curator at a Chelsea gallery. We'd never been close, just exchanged nods at industry mixers. In my memory, she always wore tailored suits, her gaze sharp as a scalpel. "Elias, I need a favor," she said, her voice urgent yet still elegant. "Pretend to be my boyfriend. For 2 months." I froze, and the photo slipped from my fingers into the developer, sending ripples across the surface. "Ms. Ventura," I said, yanking off the dark cloth as the incandescent light flickered on, illuminating the fatigue in her eyes, "did you come to the wrong place? I'm not a professional actor." "I know you're not." She pulled a photo from her trench coat pocket of a middle-aged couple with warm smiles. "These are my parents. They're coming to New York next weekend for my grandmother's 80th birthday party. They've been pressuring me to marry for 3 years, and I can't stand another blind date. Those Wall Street finance guys only talk about stocks and golf." She paused, pulling an envelope from her bag. "This is $5,000 as compensation. Plus, I can connect you with gallery resources. Your work has so much tension, it shouldn't be stuck on niche websites." I stared at the envelope, then at her. Her hair was disheveled, her usually immaculate makeup smudged by rain, yet somehow, she looked vulnerable, in a way that felt unexpected. "Why me?" "Because we know each other, we don't dislike one another, and you seem reliable." She avoided my gaze. "My parents won't dig too deep. Just get through the birthday party, make a few phone calls now and then, and we'll break up amicably in 2 months. No strings attached." I fell silent. As a freelance photographer, my income was erratic. $5,000 would cover my rent for the next 3 months. But the gallery connections were even more tempting. I'd spent countless nights shooting, and my work deserved a bigger stage. Still, pretending to be in love sounded like a cliched romantic comedy, and I'd never been the type to star in one. "Think about it." Lila set the envelope on the table. "I'll be at that French bistro in Greenwich Village tomorrow at 6 p.m. for your answer." She turned to leave, the hem of her trench coat brushing my tripod, leaving a faint scent of gardenias in her wake. That night, I stared at the photos lining my walls. The people in them laughed and cried, but their emotions were real. Meanwhile, I was about to pretend to love someone. In the end, the pressure to survive won out over reason. I picked up the phone and dialed Lila's number. "I'll do it," I said. "Thank goodness." Her voice sighed with relief. "We'll work out the details tomorrow." And Elias, dress formally. The next evening, I pulled on my only suit, the one I'd bought for graduation, now a little too tight. The French bistro was dimly lit, and Lila was already sitting by the window, wearing a wine-red dress with her hair pulled back, exposing her slender neck. When she saw me, she stood up, a perfectly calibrated smile on her lips. "You're here." She gestured for me to sit. "We need to set some rules." She pulled a notebook from her bag and started reading. "First, act affectionate in front of my family, holding hands, hugs, forehead kisses only. No crossing lines. Second, learn each other's basic info to avoid slipping up. I've written down my likes, family background, everything. You need to tell me yours too. Third, break up in 2 months citing personality differences. No pestering." Fourth, she looked up at me, her eyes serious, no real feelings allowed. I nodded, taking the notebook she handed me. The pages were filled with neat, dense handwriting. Lila loved gardenias, hated cilantro, her father was a physics professor at Boston University, her mother a piano teacher, and she had a brother in medical school in Chicago. "I'm not very interesting," I said. "My parents divorced when I was in college, remarried, and we don't talk much." I like photography, hate loud places, no pets, no relationship history. Lila raised an eyebrow. No relationship history? Nope. I stirred my coffee awkwardly. Never had the time, or met the right person. She didn't press further, closing the notebook. My parents arrive in New York tomorrow. I'll pick them up from the airport. Be at my place at 7 p.m. to pick me up for the birthday party. Remember, you're Elias, the freelance photographer, kind, attentive, and head over heels for me at first sight. Love at first sight? I chuckled. Isn't that a bit cheesy? My parents eat that stuff up. Lila raised her wine glass. Break a leg, Mr. Thorne. You too, Ms. Ventura. That Sunday night, I stood outside Lila's apartment building, taking a deep breath. Her building was on the Upper West Side, gated and sleek, a world away from my shabby attic. When I rang the doorbell, it opened immediately. Lila was wearing a white formal dress, her face tense with nerves. You're here, she whispered. My parents are inside. Remember what I told you? We met at that Brooklyn art exhibit. You fell for me instantly, chased me for 3 months. I nodded, following her into the apartment. The living room was bright and spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park at night. A middle-aged couple sat on the couch, standing up as soon as we walked in. This must be Elias, Lila's mother said, smiling as she took my hand, warm and soft. Lila's told us so much about you. She says you're an incredibly talented photographer. That's very kind of you, I gave the gentle smile we'd rehearsed. I'm the lucky one to be with Lila. Lila's father was a stern-looking man. He sized me up, then nodded. Treat my daughter well, young man. I will, sir. The birthday party was at an Italian restaurant in Queens, with dozens of relatives. Lila's grandmother was a gray-haired woman with a cane, who grabbed my hand and refused to let go. Elias, you hold on to Lila tight. My granddaughter's so wonderful, plenty of people would snap her up. I will, Grandma. I smiled, glancing at Lila out of the corner of my eye. She was holding a wine glass, a faint smile on her lips, and her gaze toward me held a warmth that felt real. During dinner, Lila slipped her arm through mine naturally, picking food for me and whispering stories about her relatives. Her fingers brushed my skin occasionally, sending tiny electric shocks through me. Just as I was getting lost in the moment, Lila's uncle spoke up. Elias, you said you chased Lila after that Brooklyn art exhibit? I remember that show was last October, but Lila was still complaining about blind dates to me in November. The air went silent. I felt Lila's body stiffen beside me, her hand tightening around my arm until her fingers felt icy cold. My mind raced, cold sweat dripping down my back. We'd checked the meeting place, but forgotten to sync the timeline. Lila's mother looked confused too. You're right, Lila was still venting about it back then. Uncle, you must be mixing up the dates. I thought quickly, squeezing Lila's hand and keeping my voice as natural as possible. I did fall for Lila at that October exhibit, but she was so busy curating, she didn't even notice me. I chased her for 3 whole months, finally working up the courage to confess in January. She took her time deciding before saying yes. I turned to Lila, my eyes pleading. Right, Lila? Lila snapped out of it, nodding frantically, a forced smile on her face as her voice trembled slightly. Why yes. Dad, Mom, Uncle, don't you remember? I told you in January about meeting this really persistent photographer. Her hand squeezed mine under the table, hard enough to hurt. I was on the fence back then, didn't make it official until last month. I was scared you'd pressure us to get engaged, so I didn't say anything sooner. Grandma laughed, diffusing the tension. Well, that's sweet of you, Elias, chasing her for so long. Lila's uncle raised his glass, dropping the subject. Here's to you too, may you be happy together. The crisis passed, and Lila and I exchanged a relieved glance. Her cheeks were flushed from nerves, or something else, and in that moment, our unspoken understanding felt more real than any act. After the party, I walked Lila and her parents back to their apartment. At the door, Lila's mother pulled me aside. Elias, come over for dinner sometime. I'll make your favorite apple pie. Thank you, I'd love that. On the subway ride back, I stared at the passing lights outside the window, replaying the dinner's close call and Lila's anxious face in my mind. I realized this fake relationship game had strayed far from its original plan, and I was falling hard for this woman who was equal parts composed and vulnerable. In the weeks that followed, we dated frequently. Sometimes we'd visit galleries, Lila explaining each piece with a passion that lit up her eyes. Sometimes we'd walk along the Brooklyn waterfront, and I'd take photos of her, no poses, just her natural beauty, unguarded in front of my lens. Sometimes we'd cook at her apartment. Lila was a terrible cook, burning eggs more often than not, but she'd laugh like a child every time. We stuck to the rules, keeping a safe distance, yet somehow, we kept drifting closer. She'd bring me hot coffee when I stayed up editing photos. I'd take her to watch the sunrise over the Brooklyn Bridge when work stress got to her. We shared secrets, talked about our dreams for the future, and the lies we'd made up to fool her family slowly started to feel real. Once, we visited her uncle in Long Island, staying at his beach house. A heavy rainstorm hit that night, and Lila, terrified of thunder, showed up at my bedroom door. "Can I sleep with you?" Her voice shook, her eyes filled with dependency. I hesitated, then nodded. We lay on the bed, a gap between us. When thunder boomed, Lila inched closer instinctively. I put my arm around her, she tensed for a second, then relaxed, burying her head in my shoulder. "Thank you, Elias." Her voice was muffled. "I'm not as strong as I seem. I've been pretending to be independent, unbreakable, but I get scared too. I just want someone to lean on sometimes." "I know," I said, patting her back gently. "Me too." We didn't cross any lines that night, just held each other until morning. When the sun streamed through the window, Lila woke up, her cheeks blushing as she quickly looked away. "Last night, thank you." "You're welcome." My heart raced as I looked at her. "Lila, I think." "Don't." She cut me off, panic in her eyes. "We agreed. No real feelings." I swallowed the words on the tip of my tongue. "Right. We were just acting. This play would end sooner or later." As the 2-month mark approached, Lila's parents grew more and more fond of me, even starting to hint at engagement. Lila always made excuses to brush them off, her face falling every time she hung up the phone. I knew she was trapped in this fake relationship too, unable to escape. And I'd long since fallen in love with this woman, tough on the outside, soft on the inside, unafraid to show her fragility when no one else was looking. That day, a light drizzle fell over Brooklyn. We sat in our usual small bar, smooth jazz blending with the sound of rain. Lila held her wine glass, her fingers tracing the rim absent-mindedly as she looked at me, her eyes hazy. "Elias, we have a week left." "I know." My heart felt heavy, like a sponge soaked in rainwater. "When it's over, we'll break up like we agreed." Her voice was hoarse, her eyes glistening with tears. "I'll tell my parents. I'll say we just weren't right for each other." "Lila," I said, grabbing her hand suddenly. Her skin was icy cold, and I could feel her trembling. "Do we have to?" She looked up, tears finally spilling down her cheeks, dropping into her wine glass and sending tiny ripples. "What other choice do we have? It's all fake from the start." She sounded like a wounded animal, her voice cracking. "You did this for rent and gallery connections. I did it to get my parents off my back. It's just a transaction, we used each other. But the feelings are real." I raised my voice, letting out all the frustration and affection I'd been holding back. "Lila, look me in the eyes and tell me you didn't feel a thing these 2 months. Tell me you were just acting when you brought me coffee at 2 a.m., when you smiled so brightly in my photos, when you clung to me during the thunderstorm." She had no answer, tears streaming harder as her shoulders shook. I don't know." She buried her face in her hands, sobbing. "I'm scared, Elias. So scared. I'm used to putting on a mask, carrying everything alone. I can't believe someone could actually like me, with all my walls up. I'm afraid this is just a dream. When I wake up, you'll be gone, and I'll be lonely Lila again." I reached out, brushing her hair away from her face, wiping her tears with my thumb. My voice was soft, but steady and sure. "Lila, this isn't a dream. I pulled a small photo frame from my pocket, a picture I'd taken of her secretly, smiling into the sunlight at Brooklyn Bridge, stars in her eyes. From the moment you burst into my darkroom, your makeup smudged by rain, asking for help with that stubborn vulnerability. To the birthday party, when you squeezed my hand so tight as we fixed that mess. To every gallery visit, every walk, every burnt egg, you've captivated me more each day. I don't love the sharp, suited curator Ms. Ventura. I love Lila, the one who burns eggs, who's scared of thunder, who lets herself be weak sometimes. I held her shoulders, forcing her to look at me, every word sincere. I know this started as a ridiculous charade. But every feeling I have for you is real, no lines, no scripts, no lies. Lila, stop pushing me away with this pretense. The lie can end, but our feelings don't have to. Give me a chance. Give yourself a chance. Let's turn this act into a real life, together. Okay. The jazz had stopped at some point, leaving only the patter of rain and our heavy breathing. Lila looked at me, her eyes filled with tears but also a spark of hope. She stayed silent for what felt like an eternity, long enough for my heart to stop beating, then suddenly threw herself into my arms, sobbing uncontrollably, clinging to me as if she never wanted to let go. Me too. Elias, me too. She choked out the words between gasps. I fell for you a long time ago. When you saved me at the birthday party. When you showed me the best spot to watch the sunrise. When you said me too that rainy night. I just couldn't admit it. I held her tight, feeling her tremble, her hot tears soaking through my shirt, our hearts beating faster and closer, as if merging into one. The rain still fell outside, but the darkness in our hearts had lifted, chased away by this long-overdue confession. A week later, we didn't break up. Lila told her parents everything, the fake agreement, the real feelings. They were stunned at first, then Lila's mother smiled, pulling us into a hug. Silly kids. Does it matter how it started, as long as you love each other? I saw the way Elias looks at you, he can't hide that kind of truth. Her father nodded, clapping me on the shoulder. Elias, your beginning is unusual, but I can see you're a good man. Take care of Lila. That night, we walked through Central Park. Lila linked her arm through mine, looking up at the stars, a happy smile on her lips. Elias, do you think we're crazy? A little, I laughed, kissing her forehead. But I'm glad we're crazy together. She leaned her head on my shoulder, whispering. Me too. At last, my photos were no longer lonely. Those lights and shadows now included a gentle figure, a real emotion. The Brooklyn wind still blew, but it no longer felt cold because I knew, no matter where I went, I'd never be alone again. This love, born from a lie, had finally bloomed in the lights of New York, bright, genuine, and unshakable. Lila and I had gone from fake lovers to something real, something forever. A year later, we bought an apartment with a small attic in Brooklyn, just a short walk from the shabby attic I'd once rented. On moving day, Lila wore a loose denim shirt, her sleeves rolled up as she arranged photo frames, tiny beads of sweat on her forehead, but a bright smile on her face. Elias, what do you think about hanging our wedding photo here? She pointed to a blank wall in the living room. In the photo, we stood on Brooklyn Bridge, she in a simple white wedding dress, me in a well-fitted suit, with the sky glowing pink and gold behind us. Perfect, I said, walking over to hug her from behind, resting my chin on top of her head. I smelled the familiar scent of gardenias. She'd tried countless perfumes over the years, but always kept this one. It's the smell our story started with, she'd say. Just a little to the left, I added. It'll match the photo wall better that way. I'd built that photo wall myself, covered with snapshots of our year together, Lila with flour on her face, grinning after burning eggs in the kitchen, us building a snowman in Central Park, her nose bright red from the cold, her accompanying me to an abandoned factory shoot, wrapped in my old jacket, her eyes filled with curiosity and support. Front and center hung the small frame I'd given her in the bar, next to a new photo, her leaning against me, smiling softly, with the French bistro where we'd first made our rules in the background. Married life wasn't filled with grand romantic gestures, but with quiet, steady warmth. I was still a freelance photographer, but thanks to Lila's connections, I'd finally held my first solo exhibition. On opening night, Lila stood at the gallery door in a tailored suit, introducing my work to every guest, pride shining openly in her eyes. "This is my husband Elias's work," she'd say. "He's a master at capturing the tenderness and loneliness of the city." When people asked about our love story, she'd laugh and say, "It started as a ridiculous deal, but it's the best choice we ever made." And Lila, she'd slowly let down her armor. No longer forcing herself to be strong all the time, she'd curl up in my arms when work stressed her out, cry like a child during sad movies, and cling to me tightly on thunderous nights, no longer hiding her fear. We cooked together. Her skills still weren't great, but she'd learned to make my favorite apple pie, even if the edges were sometimes burnt. We walked together, not for show, but just to enjoy each other's company, chatting about our days and dreaming about the future. We stayed up late together, her working on gallery documents in the living room, me editing photos in the attic, passing each other mugs of hot coffee when we grew tired, understanding each other with just one look. One weekend morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through the window. Lila was still asleep beside me, her long eyelashes casting soft shadows on her cheeks, a faint smile on her lips. I slipped out of bed quietly, grabbing my camera to capture the moment. Just as I pressed the shutter, she opened her eyes, rubbing them sleepily. "Elias," she mumbled, her voice thick with sleep. "You're taking photos of me again. Can you blame me?" I said, leaning down to kiss her forehead. "My wife's too beautiful not to capture." "Where do you want to go today?" I asked. "A walk by the river? Or that new movie you wanted to see?" Lila stretched, then snuggled into my arms, wrapping her legs around my waist. "Nowhere," she said. "I just want to stay home with you, help you edit photos, and try the new bread recipe I learned." She paused, looking up at me with a twinkle in her eye. "Oh, and my parents are coming to New York next week. Mom said she'll make apple pie, and she asked when we're going to have a baby." I froze for a second, then laughed, holding her tighter. "Whatever you want, my love. Whatever you want." The sunlight filled the room, illuminating the photo wall and our intertwined figures. At last, my lens no longer captured only lonely light and shadow, it captured Lila's smile, our love, and the warmth of home. The Brooklyn wind still blew, but now it carried the scent of gardenias, the sweetness of apple pie, and the sound of our heartbeats, gentle, steady, and full of joy. I knew our love had flourished not by chance, nor by grand romance, but because in each other's eyes, we'd seen the truest versions of ourselves. We'd found the companionship we'd both been searching for. Like the light and shadow of the city, cold and lonely on their own, but warm and bright when they come together. And Lila and I would keep walking through Brooklyn's light and shadow, hand in hand, turning this fake love into a lifetime of happiness, one quiet, beautiful moment at a time.